Okay. Tonight's our third class in comparisons of different religions. Last week we discussed Hinduism, and then this week we're going to discuss Buddhism. Um, any questions from last week before we go on? Any questions from last week before we go on?
Not from my side, Pastor G. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Okay. Then let's talk about Buddhism. Um, and as I was looking at this, I learned some things that I was really baffled because some of the things was completely different than what I had thought, and I thought I knew. So this is good that we're going over it, and we can all learn together. Okay, so getting started here, the history of Buddhism. Okay, it was founded by Siddhartha Gautama. Uh, he was the first Buddha, and technically, I guess, is the only Buddha, but not really. Okay, it was in the 5th century BC, BCE. Okay, before the Common Era. Okay, and it was founded in India. It comes out of India, just like Hinduism comes out of India. Buddha comes out of India as well. Okay. Um, And it's kind of like what we were talking about last week. I think we talked about a little bit was that the Chinese story, Journey to the West, is a story of a monk that was traveling to India to um, to find the book. And for those who are in China, you know that story began in Xi'an and then went west to India, where he found the book. Okay. All right. It spread throughout Asia, including the development of various branches like Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, if I pronounced those correctly. All right. Like any religion, you have the main religion, but then you have branches that branch off little different things. But for the most part, it's pretty much what it is for everybody who believe in Buddha. Okay. For the key beliefs. The key beliefs starts with what we call the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, and it's the reality of suffering, its cause, its end, and the path to its end. So the first noble truth is that there's such a thing called suffering. Okay? So, Trezor, can you read that for us, please?
Yes, Pastor Joe. The fourth noble truth, the reality of suffering, its cause, its end, and the path to its end. Number one, much confusion is due to the English translation of the Pali Sanskrit word dukkha as suffering. According to the then Ajahn Sumedho, a Theravadin monk and scholar, the word actually means incapable of satisfying or not able to bear or withstanding anything. Other scholars replace suffering with stressful. Dukkha also refers to anything temporary, conditional, or compounded of other things. Even something precious and enjoyable is dukkha because it will end. Number two.
No, just stop. So stop there. We could do each one by itself. All right. Any questions on number one? Any questions on number one? So we use the word suffering, but that it's more than just suffering. as we use in the English language. It is, it says, incapable of satisfying. Okay, so and it's anything that's temporary, and there's very few things that are permanent. Very few things that are permanent. So anything that is temporary, anything that we can't have, that we want, or something that we do have that we don't want, those things are called suffering, and that is the that is the main trust of Buddhism, is that's the real reason why Buddhism exists. Any questions there? Alfred, any questions?
No, sir, I think I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Kara, Kareem, you okay? Because you got to understand this, because if you don't understand this, then everything else doesn't make sense. And again, we're not saying we agree with or disagree with it. We want to make sure that everyone understands it. Okay. Number 2, Alfred. Can you read that, Alfred? Number 2?
Yes, I could, sir. I was reading, but I didn't notice I was muted. Sorry for that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes. The second noble truth is that it teaches that the cause of suffering is greed or desire. The actual word from the early scripture is tanga, and this is more accurate translated as thirst or craving. We continually search for something outside ourselves to make us happy. But no matter how successful we are, we never remain satisfied. The second truth is not telling us that we must give up everything we love to find happiness. The real issue here is more subtle. It's the attachment to what we desire that gets us into trouble.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Okay. Any questions there?
Yes, Pastor Joe. I think it's not a question per se, but it's just to add on something. That last line that says that is the attachment to what we desire that gets us into trouble. My thinking is that does it mean that, because generally it's like people are, as human beings, we are hardly satisfied. For maybe example I can give is that maybe somebody's a business person and then he's doing very well, he gets wealth, and it's like the more they get wealth, the more they feel they can make more. And they keep going on and gathering all these things. So I don't know if that last word means it explains that, or it means something different. Maybe that's what I wanted to chip in before.
Okay.
Yes.
It means more than that. Okay. And according to the Buddhist way of thinking, you can love your wife, but it can be a detriment to you. It can be good, but it also can be a detriment to you.
How?
Okay, and this is the difference here again, because in Buddhism does not teach one to find happiness. It doesn't teach somebody to find happiness. Okay, remember it says the second truth is not telling us that we must give up everything we love to find happiness. No, the Buddhism is to not be attached to that happiness. because it's temporary. It's not permanent. So you're right in what you say when it relates to somebody who wants more than what they have. But it's more than that. It is everything.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think I understand, Pastor Joe. Thank you.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. Okay. Kareem, are you there? Are you driving?
Pastor Joe,
Yes.
yeah, he left a message in the chat box. Yeah, that is still at work.
Okay.
So he's not able. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. At least he's listening, so that's okay. All righty. Trezor, go ahead and read 3, please.
Okay. You also make a request there for the book.
For what book?
Oh, the book that you wrote, so he can give to his unborn baby as a gift.
Oh, okay. 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 Got it.
Okay. So number 3, right?
Yes.
Okay. The Buddha teaching on the Four Noble Truths are sometimes compared to a physician diagnosing an illness and prescribing a treatment. The first truth tells us what the illness is, and the second truth tells us what causes the illness. The third noble truth holds out hope for a cure. The solution to dukkha is to stop clinging and attaching. But how do we do that? The fact is that it cannot be accomplished by an act of will. It's impossible to just vow to yourself, from now on, I won't grab anything. It doesn't work because the condition that give rise to craving will still be present.
Okay. Questions on that? Okay, so they comparing it to a patient who has an illness. It says that you first go and say what the illness is. Okay. I have a headache. Okay. Then you say, okay, now what caused the headache? That's number 2. Okay. And then number 3 is then how do I how do I deal with it so that I don't have headaches anymore? And number 4 is no headache. Okay? Any questions there? All right, number 4.
Yes,
Yes.
Pastor, excuse me. So finally, then, what is number 3?
Number 3 is the cure. Number 3 is the cure.
But they did not say what is that cure. What is that specific cure then?
Right. We're gonna get to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna get to that. But you know there is a cure. So you can go to the doctor and you say, I have a headache. Doctor can say you have a headache because of whatever. And then the question is, can you fix it? You know what's wrong with me. Can you fix it? And number 3 is yes, we can fix it. So you don't have any more headaches. And then number 4 is what? Well, what are you going to do? Understand?
Yes, Pastor Joe. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay. No, okay. But like I say, we need to make sure we understand this because this is the crux of Buddhism to some degree. Number 4, The Buddha spent the last 45 or so years of his life giving sermons on aspects of the Four Noble Truths. The majority of these were about the fourth truth, the path, Magga. Okay? That's the cure. Now, so, yes.
Sorry, Pastor Joe. Yeah, I know that you say maybe we are going to get into it. I don't know. This cure, is it, I don't know, what they call, I think in the book, like something like awaken, something like that? Awakening?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. He had an awakening. He had an awakening. What? And let's see. I think I'm not sure. Okay, let's talk about it. He was born in royalty. His father was a king or in some kind of royal family. Okay, and so was he was separated from the world, the normal world, in the sense that he had everything he wanted, everything he needed. You know, see, he didn't know anything about poverty or hunger or people being sick. He didn't know any of that. All he knew was everything that was luxury. Okay. Then he, as the story goes, one day he saw things that he had not seen before. He saw someone that was crippled. He saw someone who was begging. Okay. All righty. He saw someone that was being buried, if I remember correctly. All right. And and so he said, well, wait a minute. Things are not what I thought it was. And so he actually left the palace, for lack of a better term, and went out into the forest trying to see the world. And while he was there, he was sitting under a tree and he found it, everything came to him that he was looking for. And that's what's called the awakening. Okay, where he said, okay, I thought everything was one way. Now it is completely different than what I thought. And so that's the awakening. Okay?
Yes, Pastor Joe. So
Okay.
if I understand, it looked like this awakening, it like you are taking conscience of something. Like I don't know if we can interpret it like maybe having a knowledge that you did not have, or having an understanding of what you didn't have, or knowing something that you didn't know, and or taking conscience of something that you weren't aware. I don't know if
Right.
we can put it that way also.
No, that's correct. That's correct.
Thank you,
That's
Pastor.
correct. Now, according to legend, it was one or two things happened, and you talk about 2,500 years ago when nothing was written down, so people just talked, as we talked about before. Uh, is that uh, at that point under the tree, he then became Buddha. Before then, he was not Buddha, but after his awakening, he became Buddha. Understood?
Yes, Pastor Joe.
Okay, all righty. And one or two things happened. He went away for a couple of years and reached Nirvana, which we're gonna talk about in a minute. Okay, and then he came back and then he taught other people what they needed to know, or he taught other people in the beginning, and then when he died, he reached Nirvana. Okay, all right. We could talk about Nirvana here in a minute, but
Okay.
there were 8 steps, eightfold path that someone has to do in order to reach nirvana. And let me talk about nirvana first, and then we come back. Okay. Nirvana is the goal. It is not heaven. It is it's when you reach the point where you have no craving for anything. Let me say that again.
My question actually is it even possible?
Yes. According to the Buddhist religion, it is. And these 8 steps that we're going to talk about is what one has to go to get to that point. But according to the Buddhist religion, yes, it is possible. And some people have gotten there, supposedly. Because again, craving is the cause of suffering. So if you want to get rid of suffering, you have to get rid of the craving. Okay. The 8-fold path is right understanding, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. That's the 8 steps: understanding, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. You go through those 8 steps, and you should be able to reach nirvana. Okay, nirvana again is the liberation from suffering and the cycle of rebirth. Now, Buddhism does not see rebirth the same as Hinduism. Hinduism sees it as actually going into another body. The rebirth does not mean going into another body. It's a little different. Okay. Then we also have a term called anatta, which is the doctrine of no self. The doctrine of no self. And then anicca, the impermanence of all things, means that nothing is permanent. Nothing at all is permanent. And then you have,
Pastor John.
yes.
Yes, maybe before you go further, this nirvana, the recycle of birth, because it's different from the Hinduism, then that did they explain to it what exactly happens when they say somebody's been rebirth? What basically happens?
They kinda, but they kinda don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I say they kinda don't and kinda do, it's kind of they use the argument of wind, the wind. How do you define wind? What is wind? Can you see wind?
No, you can't.
Okay. Do you know where it goes when it's not windy?
No, no,
Okay,
no.
but it exists.
Okay.
All right. And so that's the same kind of argument that they use when it comes to cycle of rebirth, is that you can't explain it in words because you just can't, but it does exist.
Okay. But still there, I understand that point very well. But still on that point, when they talk of liberation from suffering, as we've explained further, I mean earlier on, about that when you reach that stage whereby maybe you cannot grieve for anything any longer, does that mean that there won't be now feeling any pain or anything? Or you are in that realm whereby you are not able to now feel how we feel maybe in the flesh?
Okay, almost,
Almost, okay.
almost. Make sure you understand. Suffering is not pain.
Okay.
Suffering, suffering means it comes from craving something. Okay, so
Yeah.
so it's not pain necessarily. It could be, but again, like I say, if you say you love your wife, okay, and then she's not there with you, then you missing her, you craving her. That's that's a problem.
Sorry, Pastor Joe. This reminds me of something. I think earlier on in the book when I was reading, for him to end up being a Buddhist, we understand after he saw that old man that was crippled and sick and all that. I don't know how that ended because I did not read the whole story. I mean to the end. But the part that I've read is that he ended up leaving his wife and then he went. I don't know if later on he came back and they were reunited again or what happened. So because I
No.
didn't read it. Yes.
Okay. No, they were not reunited.
All right.
He went away and he never came back to his family
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
because it defeats what he was trying to preach or to teach.
So sorry for now. It's like it's a conversation. Would I be right then to say maybe according to Hinduism, you don't have to marry because you end up maybe missing your wife or missing your husband or something like that. They don't
Buddhism,
believe in marriage. Yes.
right. Buddhism, the traditional Buddhism from the beginning is without any modifications from the world, is that you do not get attached to anything,
Oh,
anything at all. That's family, that's job, that's money, that's
that's true.
vacationing, whatever. You get attached to nothing.
All right. Thank you.
Because if you get attached to something, then when you lose it, you're going to suffer.
Wow.
So suffering is not pain. Suffering is being attached to something and not having that anymore, whatever it is. Okay?
Yes, Pastor Joe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh no,
Pastor
I'm
Joe,
sorry. But you stop me whenever you want to because we need to make sure we understand this. This is the basis of what Buddhism is, which is different than Hinduism. Okay.
Pastor
Now,
Joe,
yes.
excuse me. Yeah, I have a question. If indeed, as it was defined that Buddhists, if I will say, teachers on not attaching to something, but now, how about you be attached to yourself?
No, you cannot be attached to yourself.
Yeah, allow me to give maybe an illustration to clarify my point. Let's give an example. Someone who is from that confession, and the teaching said that they're not supposed to be attached to anything, but them they are a body, if I will say. So it may happen that it may happen that maybe the earth is affected, or it may happen that they lose the mobility of anything. So is it not going to cause them any pain if they are sick, or even if it happened that for whatever reason, maybe for an accident, they happen to lose any part of their body? Is it not going to make them suffer?
No, again, I understand. See, you're still trying to equate suffering with pain. Suffering is not pain. Suffering is being attached to something that you don't want to be attached to. So it could be pain, but it also could be happiness. like I said earlier to Alfred, if you're married, you love your wife, but in true Buddhism, you should not be attached to her.
I see.
Okay, so it's not pain. Pain is what we consider suffering. It is not pain. It is, again, removing any attachments, no matter how good we think those attachments are or how bad we think those attachments are. It's removing all attachments, which means from yourself as well.
Okay, I understood, Pastor. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So to say I say to love someone like you love yourself doesn't work, because you're not supposed to. The love of yourself is not important. Okay, all right. Now we have a Nat that says the doctrine of no self. That's what we're talking about right now. There is no self. You separate yourself from yourself. No ego, no nothing about what's important to you. You ignore all those things as a part of this process of getting through this eightfold path. Okay, and then the anicca is that nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. That every second that you live, something changes. Okay, that's what they teach. Okay, certain practices that comes with Buddhism is meditation. We talked about that a little bit the other day with Hinduism. They take that, okay? They do a lot of meditating. Ethical conduct, how they live. They have certain rules and regulations that they live by, expected to live by. Okay, and that's the way it is. We'll talk about that a little bit again later. My monastic life, that's like living like a monk. Okay, living like a monk or a nun. Okay, and then they have a few celebrations that they do: Buddha's birth, enlightenment, death. Those things they celebrate. Okay, any questions there? Okay, let's get into the core values of Buddhism. Okay, and how it compares to Christianity, etc. Okay, first, Blessing, read that for us, please. Definition.
Definition.
Yeah.
Buddhism is a non-atheistic religion and philosophical tradition based on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, the awakened one. Non-theistic religions are belief systems that do not revolve around the worship or a belief in a personal deity or a supreme being. Instead, they focus on philosophical principles, ethical codes, and spiritual practices that guides individuals in their quest for meaning, morality, and fulfillment.
Okay, stop there. Stop there. Stop there. Okay, do we understand that? Everyone understands that? Now, because usually when we think of a religion, we think of a God. One God, 10 gods, 1,000 gods, okay? Something that someone worships, a God. Buddhism does not have a God. Do we understand that?
Yes, Pastor Joe.
All right, now because before, if you had asked me, I would say that they worship Buddha. They do not worship
Yeah.
Buddha.
That's
Huh?
what I believe. That's what I
Right.
believe as well. Yes.
Yeah. That's why we're doing this class.
Mhm.
Okay. That's exactly
Yes.
why we're doing this class.
Mm.
Because they do not worship Buddha.
But then there, Pastor Joe, since they don't worship Buddha or they don't have any God, who do they pray? And if they pray, who do they pray to?
They do not pray as we
Okay.
call prayer.
Yeah.
They do not as we call. They do not pray to anyone. They
Uh,
do, they, do- they do not have a God that they worship to, that they pray to.
So is it the same thing like maybe something like it's an ideology that they, or those beliefs or the eight systems that we talked about, the four truths that we talk about, are those the things that guides them in living while they are still here before maybe they enter the cycle of rebirth and all that, or
Yes,
after? Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And we're going to talk about that now. We're going to look at some examples. First example is the Humanist Society of Friends. Okay. Um, they are people used to, I think people talked about it before, Quakers. They broke off from the Quakers into a separate group, because Quakers believe in Christ. Okay. Or the normal Quaker religion. This one broke away from it, and so they do not believe in a God, but they have certain rules and regulations that they live by. Okay. Then we have the atheistic Hinduism. Again, that's people who believe in Hinduism, but do not believe in a creator. They do not believe in a creator or a God. Okay. Then you have the liberal Christianity. The liberal Christianity is people who believe in the Christian values that's taught in the Bible. Okay. They believe those values, but they do not believe in Christ or God, but they do believe in the values. So they don't believe in miracles, anything like that. Any questions there?
Now, just a small question, Pastor Joe.
Yeah.
I wanted to find out if the Buddhism, they have their own book or Bible or whatever they use. As I know, last week as we were talking about the Hinduism, you kept referring to their Bible. So do they have their own Bible or they have something they are using?
They have something they're using, and and
Okay.
and, and we use the term Bible as in a I guess in a way that's probably not accurate. It's what do they have in writing that they believe is more what we should be using rather than the term Bible.
Okay.
Okay. But yes, they all have something. They have a written document of some type that explains why they believe what they believe and what those beliefs are.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then you have Taoism, and that's China. Okay. And again, it's just it's similar to Buddhism in the sense that, uh, but 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 it's but still a little different than Buddhism. But they do not believe in a God. They don't worship a God. Okay. Then you have Confucianism. Confucius. Uh, Confucius was lived in China thousands of years ago, and he was a philosopher. And he taught. He's a teacher. All right. Some people now he never used it as a religion. He never did. But people after him have used it like a religion. And again, in the sense that they look at how he said we should live and their values, what's important, and then they do that, but they do not worship Confucius. They do not worship him as a god, but they believe strongly in his values or what he taught. Now that's interesting relates to China because there were some years in China where Confucius was not well taken. The government did not like his teachings. All right, and it's changed over time. But part of that is because again, this it was misunderstood to be a religion. It's not a religion. It's a way of life, but it's not a religion. Now for those of us who live in China, uh, Shandong is known for its emphasis on education throughout all of China, and it's because of Confucius. Because Confucius was born here, he taught here in Shandong. So he placed a lot of emphasis on the education and on how to treat older people. So a lot of what Shandong does now is based on those values that's been instilled over hundreds of years, which is different than some of the other provinces in China. Okay?
Pastor, yeah,
Yes.
I have a question. So,
Yes.
if I understood the example given here, it is like, if I say some part of Buddhism or what?
No, it's not a part of Buddhism. It's trying to explain that Buddhism does not have a God, although we call it a religion. And here are some examples of other parts of the world or part of beliefs that are similar in the sense that they are treated as a religion, but they don't have a God.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor Joe.
Okay. And again, that goes back to what we said earlier, is that if you ask most people who do people worship, they would tell you Buddhists. They say they worship Buddha, but they don't. They do not worship Buddha. They recognize Buddha as the founder of their religion, but they do not worship him as a god.
But Pastor Joe, I have been in some back in the time, visited some, as in China. There are some touristic things. Whether if you go to climb a mountain, you will always find like, if I would say, a Buddhist temple. I have seen people offering whether fruit or making prayer or using kind of like incense. Yeah, like kind of like that we can call like worship toward those idols. And I don't know then what is those practice all about if it's not worship. I don't know. Or how can we explain what they are doing? I don't know.
Okay, a good question. A good question. And we'll talk about it a little bit as we go on. But part of the last step in this process is meditation. Meditation is, again, as we know, is looking on the inside and trying to, to get closer to what you think you ought to be. All right. And so when people are doing that, they're not doing it to worship that that idol or that God. That's a part of the process of meditating. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, Pastor Joe.
Okay. Now it's important to understand it because we sometimes misunderstand. I mean, for instance, I know some people who are Christians who do not allow incense in their house. They don't allow people to have incense in their house because they equate it with worshiping a God. Although some people have incense in their house just for the smell. They don't use it for anything else other than makes the house smell good. But people will say, no, you can't do that because it is worshiping God or a God. Because they don't understand what the incense is for. Okay? We good?
Yes, thank you, Pastor Joe.
Okay. All right. Okay. All righty. Okay. So, uh, Blessing, read this for us, please. Beliefs and practices.
Belief and practices. Non-atheistic religions share common beliefs and practices, including emphasis on ethical conduct, compassion, and altruism. Second point, meditation, mindfulness, and spiritual cultivation. They also practice rituals, ceremonies, and festivals to mark significant life events and seasonal changes. They also share common beliefs on study of sacred texts, philosophical teachings, and moral precepts. And also they share common beliefs and practices on respect for the interconnectedness of all living beings and the natural world.
Okay.
About the
Thank you. Thank you. So, anybody got any questions there? Again, if you think in terms of a religion and think of a God, then these things may fit underneath there. Okay. How you live, ethical conduct, meditating, say we meditate on the Bible. Okay. These things are common to religions, but the difference here is that they do not have a God. They do not believe in a God or a creator. So that's true of all of these examples as well as Buddhism. Okay? We're good?
We're good, Pastor Joe. Thank you.
All righty. Okay. Geographical origins, again, it originated in India, and now it's predominantly in Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, China, Korea, Japan, Tibet. Okay. And I said Tibet is part of China, so it shouldn't be there by itself. But it's there by itself because Tibet has a version of Buddhism which is a little different than the one that was started out initially. So that's why it's separated out. Okay. Okay. Again, we see who was founded by around 500 BCE. And this is what we talked about before. He was born a prince and in Nepal, born in Nepal, not in India. Okay. He lived a sheltered life. Then he saw, as his book says, an old man, a sick man, a corpse, and an ascetic. Okay. He renounced his royal life, aimed enlightenment under the Bodhi tree after years of meditation and asceticism, and spent the rest of his life teaching the truth. Okay, that's about him as a person. I think he lived to 80-something years old. Okay. Yeah, I think 84, 85 when he died. Okay. There are different parts of Buddhism we just talked about, different ones. But we won't go into each individual one, but they are, look, they're all about the same stuff. There's some slight differences. Some slight differences. Okay. All righty.
Pastor Joe.
Yes. Yes.
Talking of those slight differences, were these developed after he passed on or while he was still alive?
After he died.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Then we talked about, we go back down, we look at some of the core teachings, the Four Noble Truths we talked about before. Let's go through them again, a little bit more detail. The first is life involves suffering. Life involves suffering. And we talked about it a little bit. But he specifically identified the 6 things that he thought that everybody experienced that was suffering. Okay? First is the trauma of birth. When a baby is born, it goes through a trauma. Okay? Yes, no? We understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
I understand.
Okay. Then the pathology of sickness, illness. Everybody gets sick at some point in time, even if it's a common cold. Okay. The morbidity of decrepitude. That just means that the longer you live, you're not going to physically be able to do everything you used to do. And so everybody's afraid of getting to that point where they have to have somebody to take care of them. So they can't take care of themselves. Okay? All right. Then the phobia of death. Everybody's afraid of dying. Everybody's afraid of dying. Okay, and I was reading something the other day, it was a joke about death, and just reminded me just now. The Sunday school teacher was teaching about going to heaven, going to hell, and so the Sunday school teachers asked the kids, if you do good, if you you pay money to people and things like that, would that get you into heaven? And the kid says, no, that won't get you into heaven, which is the right answer. And then the teacher says, well, then what will get you into heaven? And the little boy said, dying. So, no one wants to die. No one wants to die. Okay. Number 5, to be tied to what one dislikes. To be tied to what one dislikes. Some things you have that you can't get away from, and you don't like it, so you suffer because of it. And number 6, to be separated from what one loves. That's why I would say it could be, it's not necessarily one way or the other. It's not pain necessarily. To be separated from what one loves can cause someone suffering. So that's the 6 things that cause suffering for everyone. Any questions there?
Yes, Pastor Joe.
Okay.
I'm more, maybe, you see, number 2, number 3, number 4, according to the belief of Buddhism. I don't know that since they don't want to be maybe attached or grave for anything, because these things, I believe they are just natural. They will happen whether we like it or not. Now, according to their belief, so how do now somebody have to go through or to avoid this? Is it when now they have passed that stage of graving or what? Because it's like now, I do understand all this, but to me, it's like it's now getting confused. It's confusing me a bit.
Okay, I understand. That's why we're going over it. Okay, the
Yeah.
pathology of sickness. You cannot remove the sickness, but you can remove how you feel about the sickness. Understand?
A bit.
You can,
I know.
you can
I know
separate. Again, you can separate how you feel about being sick.
how.
I'm sorry?
I'm saying how. How can somebody do that according to Buddhism?
Well, it is you don't think about the the um the sickness, you think about something else. You think about something else. Your mind controls this. And we'll talk about it a little more. Okay, as we get to the 8 pathways. Okay? But we'll talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Because that's a good question. The second one is, why do we suffer? It's caused by desire or craving, as we talked about earlier. Okay? It's a specific kind of desire, the desire for private fulfillment. We want something and we crave for it, not for anyone else, but for ourselves. That's a problem. And the problem with that too is, instead of linking our faith and love and destiny to the whole, we persist in strapping these to ourselves. So for instance, I can say, I don't want my family to go hungry. I should be saying, I don't want anyone in the world to go hungry. And I should act accordingly. Okay? All right. And cessation of suffering is possible if the cause of life's dislocation is selfish craving, is cure lies in the overcoming of such craving. Again, not wanting something, no matter what it is. And what I'm trying to get to is MAGA, which is the cessation of suffering. Don't want to suffer. So in order not to suffer, I've got to get rid of any cravings that I may have. Good or bad. It's not a good or bad. It's not, some things it's okay to crave and some things it isn't. You don't crave anything. You do not crave anything at all. Okay? Questions?
Yes, please, Pastor Joe, can you repeat again the way that you define the MAGA?
Okay, mega is there is no craving. It's the end point. It's the end point. It's like have we used the word Nineveh before? It's kind of reaching Nineveh. That's the 8 steps. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the 8th step, you're there.
Understood. Thank you,
Okay.
Pastor Joe.
Okay. All righty. All right. Now let's talk about the 8-fold path. First is wisdom. Wisdom. First is right view, understanding the 4 noble truths and seeing reality as it truly is. You've got to, in order to get started on this step, on this process, you got to first understand what it is. You got to understand what suffering is. You got to understand what craving is. Okay? You got to see it the right way. That's first. Number 2 is you have the right intention. Why? Okay? Why do you want to go this path? So you got to first understand what the what, and then you understand the why. Any questions there? Okay. Then the next step, and these are all steps now. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can't jump them. You cannot jump. It's kind of like we talk about the Hinduism with the steps. You can't jump the steps. One, the next. It's impossible to jump them. Okay. Now, once you know what you're supposed to be doing and you have the right reason for doing it, then you got to start doing it. Okay? And the first is right speech. Speak truthfully, kindly, and without gossip or harm. That's an act. That's an action. Okay? Right action, behaving ethically, avoiding killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Okay. If someone is a strict Buddhist, then they do not eat meat. They're vegetarian. If they are a strict Buddhist. Now, why don't they eat meat? Anyone? Why don't they eat meat? Anyone?
I'm not sure, Pastor Joe, but I think maybe they don't eat it because they believe that there's life in the blood if they eat.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm not sure. I'm just thinking.
Well,
This is
you're
just what
almost there.
I'm almost there. Okay.
You're almost there.
Okay.
Read the right action. What did you say? Read that again.
The right
Right
action.
action. Yeah.
Okay. Behaving ethically, avoiding killing, stealing,
Stop.
and sexual.
Stop.
Okay.
Avoiding.
Avoiding killing and stealing.
So
Yes.
why don't they eat meat?
Because they don't want to kill.
Right.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with blood. Anything. It's just they don't kill.
Okay.
And in order to eat meat, you got to kill.
How about if it's somebody else who kill it? Or
Nope.
maybe the animal die by itself.
Well, yeah, you might be able to get away with the animal dying by themselves, but you're not gonna get away with somebody else killing it for you. That ain't gonna work. Uh, but it's, I remember I was watching a movie, and it was a monk, and he was strict, and there was an insect, and I forget what kind. I don't know, if it was a grasshopper or something, and somebody was going to kill the insect, and he said no, and he took the insect and threw it out the door or something, to keep someone from killing it. And that's why, because he didn't believe in killing.
So that means, Pastor Joe, so that, let's give an example. If they are in the forest or in the jungle or whatever, and there come a snake who's trying to kill them, or whatever animal that can try to kill them. So they are not going to defend, I don't know, themselves, or I don't know, what will be the approach? If it's like, yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know the answer. My presumption is that they would, but but killing just to be killing is probably something they wouldn't do. That's my presumption, but I really don't know. Okay, we good there? Okay, all righty. Now this is one that's interesting. Right livelihood. What's a livelihood? What's livelihood? Okay. Livelihood is what somebody does for a living. Okay. I'm a teacher, that's my livelihood. Somebody else is a doctor, that's their livelihood. The Buddha taught there were some very specific occupations that you could not do if you were living Buddhist life. Okay. And he identified 6 or 7 of them specifically that said you could not do. One was being a tax collector. You could not be a tax collector and be Buddhist. You couldn't be a butcher in a meat shop. Uh, you couldn't be something to do with trading, and I forgot what. Okay, but you couldn't be a trader. Uh, and there were 4 or 5 others that were specifically stated that you could not do as a livelihood. Okay, any questions there? So that's your ethical conduct. That's your ethical conduct. Mental discipline. Okay, so that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now we to step 6, 7, and 8. Right effort. Developing positive states of mind, preventing and overcoming negative ones. Everything should be positive. Right mindfulness, being fully aware of body, feeling, thoughts, and mental states, and right concentration, practicing deep meditation to develop a calm, focused mind. Now, back to Alfred. Going back to what we said earlier, if you have when you get to this step here, where you being able to meditate, get the right feelings, thoughts, mental state, then you now are past those issues we talked about earlier. okay? Or pathology of sickness. You don't even think about sickness. You don't even think about it. You know what I mean? It doesn't bother you. Okay? Your mind is past that. The mobility of decrepitude. Again, you don't think about the fact that you're not going to be able to take care of yourself. You don't even think about it. Death, you don't even worry about it. You don't think about it. Doesn't mean anything to you at all because of your mindset. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, my question to you is, how does that compare to our thoughts when it comes to Christianity?
I think it's slightly different, though of course some Christians might practice something similar to that in terms of meditation, in terms of knowing that you don't need to worry about maybe death, for example. I know earlier on you said everyone is afraid of death, but I believe even us as Christians, if we really probably meditate much on the word of God and we believe, we don't think of maybe sickness and all those things, I believe we can probably live free from such because I believe it's possible.
Okay.
So, but in comparison to Christianity, I think to some extent they are similar, and to some extent these ones is like they really go deep more. I think it goes maybe even as far as yoga, whereby you meditate until you pass a certain state or a certain level whereby these other things, they don't bother you any longer. I think that's my take on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the Bible say about suffering? It says be joyful, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It says
Be
even
joyful.
when you fall into diverse temptation and suffering, be joyful and all that.
Right.
I think
Okay.
that's also another thing that is maybe similar to that,
Right.
meaning that you don't need to concentrate on the suffering, but rather fix your eyes or concentrate on Christ, on God, as we believe in God ourselves as Christians. And I think by so doing, you will end up not attracting or feeling the suffering or feeling whatever depression or whatever it is when you decide to focus your mind. I think even that's why the Bible says in Romans 12, verse 1 and 2, that says we should focus on transform our minds, renew our minds by transforming it through the reading of the word and all that. I think that's similar as well. Thank you.
Okay. But the point that I'm hoping that you hear is that when you ask the question about how does someone do that, is how the mindset. It's how you think. How you think. Yeah. Okay. And here it's saying that this is the beginning. We want to get here where we can separate ourselves from these feelings. And we will not get there until we're able to get our mind right. Okay. Developing a positive state of mind. Okay. And et cetera, et cetera. That's what Buddhism believes. So they believe a lot in the meditation, to the point where you don't hear anything or feel anything around you. And the thing about it is most people cannot get there. Most people cannot get there. Only a very few people can get there. Whether you agree or disagree, right or wrong, that's what they teach. Okay. All righty. Going forward, we got some definitions we need to make sure we understand. Karma, we've talked about the law of moral causation. Whatever you do, come back to you. Now, unlike Hinduism, which has a reincarnation, they don't believe that karma. They believe in karma, but not to the extent that Hinduism believes in it. Okay, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. We've talked about nirvana. We've talked about, and then and I think we talked about this a little bit, but we need to make sure we understand it's the denial of a permanent self. We as Christians believe in there's a spirit, okay, and that when you die, your spirit separated from your body, but your spirit does exist, okay. In Buddhism, they don't believe that. They do not believe that. Something always changes in permanence. Something always changes. Okay, the major branches of Buddhism are they're listed here again. Different countries. The original teachings: Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, and then you have the other ones as well: China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, and then you have Tibet, Bhutan, and Mongolia. There's a little difference in what they believe, but it's still Buddhism. Okay, rituals and practices. Meditate, 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 meditate. You cannot be a Buddhist if you don't know you can't learn how to meditate. Okay. They have some chanting. Monks and nuns live in the temples. If you've visited any of them, you've seen those people. Flowers, incense, and food to Buddha statues as a sign of respect. Sign of respect, not worship. And then you have a couple of festivals. Okay. Any questions there?
Yes, Professor Joe, I have a question. I'm seeing here about the ritual and practice that they have. They do also chanting. So I would like to know, in Christianity, if I say scripturally, is it allowed for Christians to chant? Or what the purpose of chanting? With maybe let me put it that way. Is there any scripture that in the Christian faith we can back up the chanting?
I don't know if it's scripture per se, but I would argue, and I don't know how I would defend this, but I would argue that chanting is something that has been around for ages, and that when people weren't able to read, they did, they chanted, and then when because they just would repeat what someone else says, and so I would think that would be a form of chanting. I think that would be still okay, except that some people have gotten past that. But chanting is usually used to maintain a certain culture, maintain a certain belief, and it's a way of changing it from generation to next generation, because they've all learned the same chants. That makes sense?
Yes, Pastor Joe. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if you get a chance, you might witness this, but in a lot of the African American churches in America, not a lot. Take that back. At one time, it was a lot. Now it's not as many. They have what they call Dr. Watts hymns, and it was a small black book that had hymns written in them, and the deacons would lead the church in the hymn because people couldn't read them. But the deacons would say something, and then the people would say something right after the deacon. Okay? And then the deacon would say something else, and then the people would repeat it. That's really a chant. Are you familiar with that at all?
Not really, Pastor Joe.
Okay. The deacon would say, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound." And then everybody else would say, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound." The deacon would say,
Okay.
"Saved a grace like me." Okay? And then everybody would repeat. The only person that had the words was the deacon, the book. Okay? Because nobody else could read. So there was no need for them to have a hymn book. And some churches have kept that tradition. It's more of a tradition, nothing more. Okay? But that's a chant.
Yeah,
But
Pastor
I
Joe,
think, yes,
sorry for interruption.
that's all
I
right.
think what you just said, even here in Botswana, we have these churches, we call them mainland churches. The one that may things like churches like Roman Catholic and other, like you have one here called Anglican and the other one. So these are talking of hymns, majority of the church members, they don't know those hymns, but somebody will lead the hymn, like you've just said. Somebody will just say the first sentence, and then the whole congregation will follow, repeat what the person was saying. So I think
Yes.
we still have that here in Botswana.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
that's just a chant. I mean, that's all it is. But again, it's the purpose of the chanting in the Eastern religions, like we talk about here, Buddhism and Hinduism, is to carry on the tradition. Okay, and that was their way of carrying it on without having anything written necessarily. Okay, and so I would think in Christianity you could do the same thing with no problem, but I can't say that the Bible has any place that it says that for sure. You know, maybe the Psalms, the Book of Psalms, maybe has some things you could chant, maybe.
Thank you, Pastor Joe.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so we have those, and then we have some comparisons between Buddhism and Christianity. The founder, okay, not exactly accurate, but it's close enough for what we're discussing. And the origins, when it started, nature, God exists, but are not central. Buddhism, yeah. Christianity is monotheistic, one God. Uh, Afterlife, okay, and salvation, ethical code. The ethical code for Buddhism is the Eightfold Path. For us, it's the Ten Commandments, Sermon on the Mount, things like that. Uh, then you have the Bible compared to the books that were written from the sayings of the Buddha. Okay, and the roles of Jesus and Buddha. He was Jesus. I mean, Buddha's the teacher. Okay, and of course Christ is the Son of God. Okay. Again, concept of self. In Buddhism, self is not important. Self is not important. Okay. Whereas in Christianity, we talk about the soul. And we talked about that before. And evangelism, Christians do spread the gospel. Buddhists, they don't. Buddhists believe that it's individual person for the most part, one-on-one, not in any group setting. So if someone goes to the temple, they're not going to the temple to pray together and have someone preach to them. That doesn't happen in a Buddhist temple. Okay, any questions? Okay, and then modern, of course, in modern days, they do a lot of meditation, people who believe in Buddhists or whatever, okay? All right. And the Dalai Lama, I'm sure we've heard or seen him. He is actually Tibet he left Tibet when China took over completely. Okay. And then we got some questions that you can think about and answer, okay, for yourself. And then some suggested readings if you want to read something on Buddha. Okay. And there's a YouTube video there that I kind of looked at, and I really didn't. You can read it. I mean, you can watch it if you want to. I watched a little bit of it. I didn't find it enlightening to me that much, so that's why I didn't put it out there for anyone. Okay, any questions? Any questions? Any comments? All right, let me stop the recording now then.
Thank you, Pastor Joe.